welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witness leadership that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a witness throughout the 70s and 80s. As I do, just a warning, some of this stuff can be triggering. If you're on a journey in or out of Jehovah's Witnesses, just note that all experiences, sarcasm, humor, and more never meant to offend, only hoping to get you to think a little bit. One of the most frustrating things regarding Jehovah's Witnesses is the swamp that is cognitive dissonance. And with each passing year that I've been free of my childhood and adult religion, the feedback I become more aware of how, the feedback I get, I should say, I just become more aware of how powerful cognitive dissonance truly is. And as is my opinion, religion as an institution is the perfect definition of all things cognitive dissonance. That's just my opinion, folks. It's proof to me that the human brain has long been susceptible to religion's trappings. And it's the reason, from where I sit, that an estimated 75 to 85% of the world's population claims a religious affiliation, totaling roughly 6.5 billion people, with Christianity and Islam being the largest faiths here on our planet, and further proving how small the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses truly is, but they're the chosen ones. And for those that may be new to the concept of cognitive dissonance, allow me to share from people much smarter than I am. From Psychology Today and the article, The Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, we're told the following, quote, "The theory of cognitive dissonance proposes that people are averse to inconsistencies within their own minds. It offers one explanation for why people sometimes make an effort to adjust their thinking when their own thoughts, words, or behaviors seem to clash with each other. When one learns new information that challenges a deeply held belief, for example, or acts in a way that seems to undercut a favorable self-image, that person may feel motivated to somehow resolve the negative feelings that results, to restore cognitive consonance. Though a person may not always resolve cognitive dissonance, the response to it may range from ignoring the source of it to changing one's beliefs or behaviors to eliminate the conflict," end quote. In other words, cognitive dissonance, this is really big stuff. We might even say it's life-altering stuff. With each breath, with each decision, impacted by what your brain is constantly doing to protect you from pain, or possibly even from the obvious that causes pain. And that pain can range from inconvenience to an entirely lost life, all its potential, or even life, physical life, that is itself. Cognitive dissonance keeps good people hanging on to something that is clearly false, even absurd, by those that are watching. Consider an explanation from several psychological sources, including Liberty University, Wasatch Family Therapy, and more, that summarize the internal battle that goes on inside a person rather nicely. It says, quote, "Cognitive dissonance in religion is the mental stress from conflicting beliefs, actions, or new information challenging faith, often resolved by rationalizing contradictions, doubling down on beliefs, selectively ignoring evidence, or reinterpreting scripture rather than admitting error, to protect one's identity, community, or worldview, even if it means self-deception or complex justifications. This tension highlights the struggle between deeply held faith and reality, explaining how people persist in belief despite contradictory experiences like unanswered prayers or failing prophecies by creating protective mental frameworks. End quote. So there it is. For everyone frustrated, and trust me, there are thousands, with watching those they love, including oftentimes family members, continue to remain loyal to Jehovah's Witnesses as a faith, I present to you cognitive dissonance, a phenomenon that is often joined by its cousin, sunk cost fallacy. It pains me to share that I get dozens of direct messages from wonderful people who have tried everything possible to wake up a J-dub that they deeply care about. They thought for sure that facial hair would jolt them, or women wearing pants, or the governing body suddenly endorsing college last year, even as they trashed it at the same time during the summer convention. It's confusion. It's chaos. On the surface, it looks like the leadership is trolling people and all of us, and we all want to scream just watching it. Needless to say that while Jehovah's Witnesses want to believe Jesus Christ of the Bible sat down on this invisible throne in 1914 and set out to find someone to speak for him here on earth, it's far more likely that the entire faith is a masterclass in subterfuge of the human mind, developed by men, and they've been doing it in all kinds of forms since the dawn of time. It doesn't take much to observe human behavior and make it work for you. Doesn't take much, folks. In fact, the cognitive dissonance theory was developed by psychologist Leon Festinger and wasn't even a thing until 1957. But that has never stopped men from manipulating people for their own gain since far, far earlier in time, because you can see that it works. And with all of that in mind, I'm here asserting that manipulating people who will then go to great lengths to manipulate themselves, folks, it's been around a very long time. We do it in minor ways. When we put on a few pounds and we look in the mirror and go, no, these pants fit just fine, even as our muffin top explodes, right? We talk ourselves out of things. And it's my opinion that nowhere is this more evident than with the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to all things Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, you might be thinking, Stig, there's a lot of elephants. I mean, which elephant are you choosing? I'm here stating that the elephant in the room for Jehovah's Witnesses, because I'm going back to the beginning, folks, the elephant is Jehovah God himself, Yahweh. Have you ever contemplated how much they ignore the obvious when it comes to all things Jehovah? Have you ever thought about it? I could go on for hours about the name Jehovah alone, a name that first appeared in writing during the medieval period around the 13th century. And to say the name was derived from some creative liberties is a bit of an understatement. You see, if you've often wondered, where did this name Jehovah come from? I know, you grow up believing it's in the Bible. I know, especially if you're a Jehovah's Witness, because they put it there. But if you're wondering where it came from, Christian scholars of that time combined consonants of the Hebrew tetragrammaton, YHWH, with the vowels from Adonai, which means Lord, to form Yahweh, later Latinized as Jehovah. First recorded by Raymundus Martini around 1270. And while the concept in Hebrew letters YHWH appear in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 4, in all, not all, in many older translations, the distinct English pronunciation of Jehovah, it didn't emerge until much, much later in human history, becoming prominent in English Bibles like the King James Version, and of course now, most people identify with, our friends, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you put any thought to the name Jehovah, this elephant in the room, the God himself, consider this. If this is in fact the case, and it is, that the name itself wasn't even around until the 13th century, that means that neither Jesus Christ, nor the apostles, nor my favorite ark builder Noah, none of them used the name Jehovah. Because it is a man-made thing, taking creative liberties that they were never even exposed to in their lifetimes. And we're talking about the Son of God and the first boat builder, as examples. As if that wasn't enough, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that his son Jesus sat down on his heavenly throne in 1914, chose this guy in his little Bible study group in Pennsylvania. Then they moved on to New York, and as history tells us, they represent him. But then, in an odd twist, 12 years before labeling his favorite religion with his father's name that he didn't even use, an English name, the confusion begins. Cognitive dissonance. Wait a minute. I'm praying, worshiping, and conveying and dedicating my life to a God whose name we may not have right? We just took our best shot at it? Yeah. From the global news section of their website, that being, the only website powered by Holy Spirit, they tell us this, quote, on Sunday, July 26, 1931, Brother Joseph F. Rutherford, then president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, spoke to an audience of over 15,000 people at a convention in Columbus, Ohio, USA. End quote for a moment. You'll note with Jehovah's Witnesses, Ohio is an epicenter of this religion. Cedar Point, Columbus, a lot goes down in Ohio, not mentioned by Jesus. Sorry, I digress. Back to the quote. A portion of the program was broadcast over 450 radio stations worldwide in what was at the time the most extensive radio chain broadcast ever to air. Brother Rutherford also presented a historic resolution entitled A New Name. It contained the statement, we desire to be known as and called by the name, to wit, Jehovah's Witnesses. The audience responded in approval with a resounding aye and erupted in thunderous applause. End quote. And while I'd love to start in the Garden of Eden, let's fast forward in their book, the Bible, to another all-time moment in human history. And when I say all-time moment, I'm referring to cognitive dissonance, dishonesty, deception, and any other word you want to put to it, all courtesy of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it all starts with their version of Jehovah himself. If your goal is to remember just one act of deception on the part of the governing body, here is the one you can point to. It's an easy one. It's early. You might remember this story. You might remember that Moses had a vested interest in knowing his God personally, especially, as odd as it sounds, since he decided the best way to introduce himself to Moses was via a burning bush. Yeah. When you're going to introduce yourself as the Almighty, let's light a bush on fire and talk to you through it. I mean, it seems natural. At Exodus chapter 3, verses 2 through 5 of the New World Translation, we learn that Moses was an inquisitive guy, that burning bushes usually turn to embers, and well, They don't usually talk to you. So he wanted a closer look at this whole phenomenon. This bush is talking to me and it's on fire. Exodus 3, 2 through 5 tells us, quote, Then Jehovah's angel appeared to him in a flame of fire in the midst of a thorn bush. As he kept looking, he saw that the thorn bush was on fire, and yet the thorn bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I will go over to inspect this unusual sight to see why the thorn bush does not burn up. End quote for a moment. Unusual indeed. Hey, look over there. There's a bush on fire and it's talking to me. I mean, I couldn't help but wonder. I wonder what Moses' first question with this whole thing would be. Back to the Bible, quote, When Jehovah saw that he went over to look, God called to him out of the thorn bush and said, Moses, Moses, to which he said, Here I am, end quote for a moment. Well, listen, you might be taking a walk now in your favorite park, and if a bush starts screaming your name, I don't know that you should go running over to it, and I most certainly don't know if you should answer it and say, Hey, I'm right here. I think maybe you should get yourself to some medical attention. But back to the Bible, quote, Then he said, Do not come any nearer. Remove your sandals from your feet, because the place where you are standing is holy ground, end quote. We are here, folks, talking about an obvious elephant in the room. I think this qualifies as an elephant in the room. The burning bush continues by telling Moses he wants to deliver the Israelites from Egyptian bondage, and he wants to take them to a land that he promised them, the promised land. Not unlike what Jehovah does now. You might correlate this almost immediately. He does this kind of with the governing body when he tells them to build movie studios or grow beards and stand in front of book cards. And Jehovah's Witnesses, well, like Moses with a talking bush, they just go, oh, I'm right here. Okay, tell me what to do. They just take the governing body's word for it. And I think I speak for many when I say we would actually prefer to get new instructions from a talking burning bush instead of the 11 guys in upstate New York. But I guess that isn't on the table in 2026, so here we are. Moses is among the first Bible characters to address the elephant in the room. No, I'm not talking about a burning bush that speaks, but, or who the hell is talking to him. When we get the following exchange, it becomes obvious. It's in Exodus chapter 3, verses 13 through 15 of the New World Translation, and see if you can spot the elephant in the room. It tells us, quote, But Moses said to the true God, Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your forefathers has sent me to you. And they say to me, What is his name? What should I say to them? So God said to Moses, I will become what I choose to become. And he added, This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I will become has sent me to you. Then God said once more to Moses, This is what you are to say to the Israelites. Jehovah, the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is how I am to be remembered from generation to generation. End quote. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go out on a limb here because I've broken free of this cognitive dissonance, and I can guarantee you, yes, I can guarantee you that the voice from the burning bush did not say to tell the Israelites his name was Jehovah. Why, Stacy? Well, folks, because unless Jehovah suddenly introduced a new language to Moses in that moment, that name had not yet ever been heard of. In fact, it would be centuries before some non-Hebrew guys came up with God's his name Jehovah. And there it is in the New World Translation, a deceptive lie that Jehovah's Witnesses just swallow. And why bring this up? Why pick on this? Because it's proof one that Jehovah's Witnesses will ignore the elephant in the room. They'll ignore Jehovah himself, his very name. How do I put this gently? How about this? It's not his name. It's not his name. Do you think any witnesses will give this a minute of thought? Much less contemplate that the governing body has added this name to his sacred book and put words in his mouth like the ones I just read to you from Exodus chapter 3. Things like, "This is my name forever, and how I will be remembered." Well, folks, it's not possible because his name hadn't even been created yet. It would be centuries before the name Jehovah was even landed on by some non-Hebrew priest guys. And so I point to this as example one. Example one of the painful reality of cognitive dissonance among Jehovah's Witnesses. I start here, and you could start anywhere. You could start with a talking snake. You could talk about women made from a rib. You could talk about many things. But the true elephant in the room wasn't in the Garden of Eden. It's Jehovah. Jehovah himself. Millions of people praying to someone, dedicating their lives to him, shunning people that they physically can see, that they physically created, and so much more. And they don't even have their God's name right. Talk about your elephant in the room. And as I contemplated this thought this week, it reminds me of all the songs we sang. Songs like, "We Thank You, Jehovah." Thank you to the guys who came up with that name. Or, "We're Jehovah's Witnesses." I believe song number 2 in the current songbook is called "Jehovah Is Your Name." Am I right? Anyone got a songbook on them? I believe it's song number 2. And I'm here to say, well, Jehovah is your name, only it isn't. It isn't your name. It never has been. It's an anglicized version of a mishmash of consonants and vowels from 2 different words. But if none of that convinces you that Jehovah himself is at the center of J-dub delusion, consider their claims that the God running their multi-million-dollar organization is, oh boy, he is, as we are told as a witness from a very young age, Jehovah is the very personification of love. Oh yeah. And I'm here to tell you that is an endlessly deep pool of cognitive dissonance. Sure, they'll point you to 1 John chapter 4 and verse 8 of the New Word Translation, which we all remember says, quote, "Whoever does not love has not come to know God, because God is love." End quote. Fact. The Bible itself says that God is love. We just established that witnesses claim that God is Jehovah. He just forgot to share his name until centuries after the Bible was written. It's a small detail. It's a small detail. And the governing body fixed that by just putting the name there. They picked up on Jehovah's error, his miss. But alas, Jehovah, or the God that Jehovah's Witnesses claim that they are dedicating to, is the personification of love? And when I say this is an elephant in the room, my mind takes me back to something Jehovah and I have in common. Our love for a guy who deserves all the credit for the phrase elephant in the room. That's right, my guy Noah. If Noah doesn't manage to capture and walk an elephant back thousands of miles to the first ever boat build, we don't have the phrase elephant in the room. But I do wonder if he was the first to utter it because, well, I'm never above an elephant fun fact, so here it is. Did you know that elephants produce a massive, massive amount of dung daily? They drop a load that's generally between 220 to 300 pounds of poo per day. Sometimes even more, folks, because they eat hundreds of pounds of plants daily, but only digest about half of them, leading to frequent defecation. Doctors and scientists say about 12 to 15 times a day they take a dump. I did zero research on this, but I can picture my guy Noah turning to his 7 other human passengers and talking about, you guessed it, the elephant in the room. I'm sure it was a lot of fun. Shout out to him. I'm borrowing the phrase to discuss an even bigger pile of shit, this whole Jehovah is love thing, okay? See what I did there? God is love? Huh? Really? They have endless books and magazines on this, publications. They've got videos. But again, Jehovah himself is the elephant in the room. And the idea that he personifies love only proves this even to a Jehovah's Witness who is battling the obvious in their own head. If you want to see a J-dub light up and then watch their face turn a different color, consider this whole Jehovah is love thing. You see, to arrive at the conclusion that Jehovah is love, one has to step around an elephant so large you simply can't even see around it. And listen, spoiler, you can't see how to get around it because, folks, you can't. You can't get around it. It's impossible. In order to navigate the subconscious mental gymnastics it takes to stay comfortably in a state of cognitive dissonance, a Jehovah's Witness has to ignore something that the governing body, indeed the entire religion, is grossly obsessed with. Wait for it. What are they obsessed with? This religion and the governing body are absolutely obsessed with the Old Testament. They're obsessed with it. Houston, we have a problem. We've got an elephant in the room. Yet another touch point in the delusional journey of a Jehovah's Witness. You remember the part where the governing body likes to remind millions of people that everything they encounter inside their religion comes from a God of love who is just loving them. And then, within seconds of saying that, taking those same millions of people on a regular journey through the Old Testament. Where do I even begin? It's this type of insanity that makes me often wonder how I lasted as long as I did as a Jehovah's Witness. And I'll say this, I think I have PTSD. Because when Queen Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones went from a benevolent freer of slaves and mother of dragons to a psychopathic killer burning people alive and smashing them with buildings, I can tell you that something inside of me during that show, my body kind of tightened. It kind of tightened up. My butt puckered. And I thought, wait a minute. Subconsciously or consciously, hey, I've seen this before. I have seen this before. Yeah. And oh yeah, what was I thinking of? I was thinking of Jehovah. And specifically the same God of the Bible who seems to have a bit of a split personality if you read the book. Anyone who grew up a Jehovah's Witness knows exactly what I speak of. Even now, this week, they're studying the Modern Bible Stories book in their weekly meeting. A publication of which is completely dominated by the stories of, yeah, you guessed it, the Old Testament. So, tell me, dear listener, did you ever have a moment where you were reading the Bible or listening to a talk as the speaker was bouncing back and forth in the Bible between the Old Testament and the New Testament? And did you ever have this moment where you thought, yeah, wait a minute, is this the same God we're talking about here? It used to remind me of that merry-go-round thing that you had in the park as a kid. I think they've taken them all out. They were like a broken bone waiting to happen. But you remember them, the merry-go-round roundabout things. I couldn't do it. I still can't, by the way. I can't go round and round. It makes me sick as a dog. But I would marvel at my friends, the other kids that would climb on. They would hold on tight, and then those that were not on the ride would spin and run and spin it and spin it and spin it and spin it as fast as possible. Then they would jump on it themselves and somehow not manage to fall off or show us their lunch all over the place. Just watching it made me sick. Still does. Merry-go-rounds make me sick, not kidding. And yeah, that is how I liken watching Jehovah throughout the Bible, especially when we would spin from the Old Testament to his son Jesus in the New Testament. Am I the only one wondering what the hell was going on? Does the speaker on the stage in this talk, bouncing around in this book, does he want to address the elephant in the room? That this doesn't even remotely sound like the same God. And why is everyone else in the Kingdom Hall just nodding their heads and accepting this? Oh yeah, same guy, right, yep. I'm sitting there punch drunk from spinning between the claim that God is love and the illustration in the old Bible Stories book showing toddlers being drowned by the same God at Noah's pool party. I'm thinking to myself, wait, this same guy? Same God? I get so many notes from amazing people wondering how their parents or their spouse or their kids can't see what is going on inside this religion. And often, in an effort to keep it simple, because you can't start with 607, folks. You can't start with the governing body. You can't do that there. I often point them to something they accept. I point them here to prove that they have had their minds molded to accept anything despite what it is right in front of them. They're ignoring that the same God whose name is made up is the same God that does things like this, often within pages of each other in his book. From the November 2015 Watchtower Study Edition, page 17, we see an example of how Jehovah's Witnesses are trained to ignore it all, or even how it all ties together and just accept it. Starting with that concept of 1 John 4:8, that God is love, and the New Testament, we are told this, quote, Jehovah's inspired written word, the Bible, tells us that God is love. It says not merely that love is one of his many admirable qualities, but that God is love. It is his dominant quality, his most important one. Jehovah does not possess love. He is the personification of it. How wonderful it is to know that the creator of the universe and of all living things is a God of love. Everything he does is guided by that quality. End quote. Okay. Are you sure we're talking about the same God? Why? Because just pages away, and trust me, there are many examples I could point to, but just pages away in the same book claiming that everything he does is love, I'm reading about Jehovah and this whole Jericho thing. We got trumpets, we got guys marching, we got big walls, we got a prostitute hanging a rope out a window. Oh, and by the way, we also have this from Joshua chapter 6, verses 20 through 21 of the New World Translation. But before I read it, please keep in mind what they just told us in the November 2015 Watchtower, that everything Jehovah does is guided by love. Joshua 6, 20 and 21 then tells us this, quote, "Then the people shouted when the horns were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the horn and shouted a great war cry, the wall fell down flat. After that, the people went up into the city, each one straight ahead, and they captured the city." What? What? They devoted all that was in the city to destruction by the sword. Man and woman, young and old, bull, sheep, and donkey. End quote. Wait, the God of love? Wait. I mean, I'm sure that the children, the old people, and the animals deserved it, right? They deserved to be slaughtered. Because it was Jehovah, the same guy that's putting you out in front of a book cart, that oversaw this little party, and he is always guided by love. Remember? He's the personification of love. Folks, you could spend your entire life as a Jehovah's Witness going to hundreds of meetings and conventions, reading thousands of pages of literature, watching hours of videos, where this massive discrepancy, this cognitive dissonance is on full display. And while most Jehovah's Witnesses are trying not to nod off and take a nap at the meetings, even those that are listening just kind of nod their heads and move along. I say that because I did it. And look, the entire religion features a highly unstable, violent God of love. But everyone just rolls with it. Week after week, year after year, obeying the governing body and stepping around the elephant in the room. This isn't a small thing. It's just something that most of us passively accepted. Much like smart people now passively accept things like new light, or that they can grow hair on their chin, or that women can wear pants, or that clinking glasses is important, or that you no longer need field service reports. Jesus decided he didn't want to read them. You wonder why a modern Jehovah's Witness is able to accept such silly, absurd, stupid things that they believe start in heaven. They believe that a God of love slaughters babies and puppies. Same God. No one wants to be the person who stands up and says, this whole Jehovah is love thingy is really troubling. Nobody wants to be that person. And the examples are endless, only proving how checked out Jehovah's Witnesses and their brains truly are. They can open the same book and see Jesus hugging and loving children, even as his father, his dad, Jehovah, is killing them with swords or even fire. Or how about the examples where he kills kids with wild animals? Yeah, he's an interesting God. Yeah, same book, same God. And you wonder how Jehovah's Witnesses can obey an ancient rule like the two-witness rule when it comes to a child who's been abused in the 21st century. How can they even think that that's feasible? How can they? Folks, Jehovah's Witnesses have been conditioned. They have been trained. They have been manipulated to think this way. They've been conditioned to believe this. Oh yes, we've got the New Testament and Jesus telling us how much he loves kids, to be like kids. Kids inherit the kingdom. And just a few pages away in the same book, The Old Testament, we see his father asking Abraham to stab his only son to death, only to stop him last second and say, just kidding, psych, psych. Or how about holding Jephthah to a ridiculous promise and allowing him to light his daughter on fire as a burnt sacrifice to the God of love, Jehovah, not really his name. This could all be shared, by the way, in the span of one public talk, with everyone in the audience not even noticing, just, where are we going after meeting today? Without a single person giving pause. So when really good, loving people ask me why they can't wake a loved one up, or how this organization continues to be a dangerous place for children, here it is. Now you know. Jehovah's Witnesses spend their whole lives on that ride in the park, the merry-go-round thing, spinning round and round with the governing body and the elders and others, spinning it as fast as possible, leaving you punch drunk for life. It all just seems like another Sunday public talk and watchtower study, all of it, though, with an elephant in the room. Jehovah himself, the God they claim to be there for. He is the only reason they're at the Kingdom Hall to begin with. And he's an elephant. If we as people consciously accept that we are worshiping a God that orders the slaughter of women and children, including everything being burnt alive or cut in half by swords or maybe a spear, or even tossed off walls, or maybe starved to death, or maybe he sends a plague to kill a bunch of babies, or maybe he makes kids and people food for wild animals. Is it a reach to see how or why a Jehovah's Witness is able to, quote, merely shun their own children for not obeying the organization? Or to withhold blood from a loved one who needs it? Or to go to the memorial talks of those who have passed away, where the speaker barely mentions the deceased in favor of telling the audience that they need to be a Jehovah's Witness? Does any of this seem shocking? When you consider that Jehovah himself is the elephant in the room, an elephant they all step around every day because they've been conditioned to. You see, they've mastered lifting select laws from the Old Testament, and then they sprinkle some fairy dust known as Jesus, some Jesus love on them from the New Testament, and they pass it all off as completely normal. Jehovah, the same God that watched babies and puppies drown at the flood at his hand, that then had his son resurrect children? Wait, huh? What? But that type of brain soup goes a long way toward making child harm, unhappy marriages, medical issues, and more seem very, very tame by comparison. And Jehovah's Witnesses get right in line with what the organization tells them. They've been conditioned. From the very beginning of their experience as a Jehovah's Witness, and for most, that is from birth. I was basically from birth. Their minds are conditioned to look away from what is obvious. I know, I've lived it. One of the most intriguing parts of this experience is how some manage to listen to the voice of common sense in their minds and actually break free of the religion. And then watch others completely surrender to it. And it all starts with Jehovah, his character. Allow me to show another example. It may be juvenile, but bear with me. I know that most here listening have likely broken free of Jehovah's Witnesses or don't even recognize the make believe elephant in the room. See if you could spot what the governing body has been doing to millions of people from just one Watchtower reference. Again, the November 2015 Watchtower Study Edition, page 17, paragraphs 3 through 6, where it says, quote, "Imagine what life would be like if God did not have love for mankind." End quote for a moment. Tell that to Jephthah's daughter. Well, never mind. Sorry. Back to the quote. "We merely have to look at the awful history of this world with its human rulerships under its unloving and wrathful God, Satan the devil. This shows us how horrible the future would be if the universe were to function without the operation of God's love. When rebelling against Jehovah's rule, the devil influenced the first human pair to do the same. He challenged the rightfulness and righteousness of God's universal sovereignty. In effect, Satan claimed that his rule would be better than that of the Creator. Though Jehovah permitted Satan to try to prove his side of the issue, such permission was temporary. In his great wisdom, Jehovah has allowed enough time to pass to expose very clearly the inadequacy of any rule other than his. The miserable record of mankind shows that neither humans nor Satan can provide what we need in the way of good rulership. God's temporary permission of wickedness serves another long-range purpose. He could use what has happened in mankind's history as the just reason to remove such rebels quickly, not allowing them to establish wickedness once again. End quote. Most of us recognize a paragraph like this. They're in almost every publication, every book at some point has a paragraph like this. It's a cut and paste explanation from the governing body as to why there is human misery today. But take it apart. It starts with the writers of this paragraph encouraging us to wonder what life would be like if Jehovah didn't love mankind, his children. They said, quote, "Imagine what life would be like if God did not have love for mankind. We merely have to look at the awful history of this world with its human rulership under its unloving and wrathful God, Satan the devil. This shows us how horrible the future would be if the universe were to function without the operation of God's love." Just to reiterate, end quote. Let your brain fire. So the Almighty Jehovah, as portrayed by the governing body, loves mankind right now, today, in this moment. He's not a big fan of this podcast or that you're listening, but he loves mankind right now. Even as we are undergoing historical misery. As our history is awful, and he allows his own son, Satan, to wreak that misery upon us. And it all shows us how bad the future would be if he didn't love us, even as he loves us now, but allows all of this to happen? Wait, what? Put it together. Does he love us or not? Are you going to let your kid run in the street or not? Do you let your kid stay out all night or not? Do you let your kid stick his hand in the barbecue while it's on or not? Is he just loving us from the bleacher seats? He had to allow his children to be tortured because of a bully he personally can't deal with, a bully that he created, his own kid. Doesn't say much for his fatherhood, but we'll leave that there. He really needed this much time to let the bully run wild at his daycare center, otherwise known as Planet Earth. Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you it's the issue of universal sovereignty, one of my favorite past episodes. Go listen if interested. But I'm here to tell you it's the elephant in the room. An elephant so large you can't ignore it. There, if you're a witness, you can, but it's a choice. But it's a God that gives permission to a bad guy to hurt his family just so everyone knows that he loves us? It's not, I don't know. Huh? For all the dear people that have loved ones trapped in this religion today, the trap was set by Jehovah himself. A biblical god lifted from a Canaanite pantheon, a storm god, by the way, and adopted by the Bible writers to explain the history of the nation of Israel. This isn't something you're going to hear at your local J-Dub book cart. The witnesses standing there have already accepted his character, and they ignore all the uncomfortable parts. And by the way, they can't be bothered to approach you. They're looking at their phones. They just got to mail it in. But when you think of all of this, I'm reminded of a powerful quote regarding human nature. The quote is, quote, "We need only in cold blood act as if the thing in question were real, and keep acting as if it were real, and it will infallibly end by growing into such a connection with our life that it will become real." End quote. By William James, the philosopher and psychologist. It is all so frustrating. Trust me, I understand. I've got family in too. But once we all accept that it all starts with Jehovah, we begin to understand some things. And of course, not his name and a character whose only profile exists in an ancient book that man broke up into two parts, sort of like his personality. When people refuse to address the elephant in the room, everything that comes after that is simply accepted and obeyed. Two witness rules, shunning, blood, pants, glasses, peace and security. It's all easy to believe after that. It's accepted and obeyed. Somehow, and with a great deal of time, the governing body has been able to convince millions that the same God that created the atom, DNA, and ice cream is equally concerned about suits and ties, the length of skirts, haircuts, and a whole bunch of other silly things. The same God that killed Egyptian firstborns to prove he was the strongest God after all is equally interested in Caleb and Sophia videos today. The same God that killed Achan and his kids for hiding a few things from the spoils of war is the same God that told the soldiers they could keep all the virgins as sex slaves in several cities. The same God that gave us the parable of the prodigal son now requires Jehovah's Witnesses to read the parable, understand it, study it, and then disobey it by shutting their own kids. All of this is courtesy of the elephant in the room. And I think you would be amazed at how many people still live in constant dread and fear of Jehovah. Even those that have left Jehovah's Witnesses years ago find themselves wondering, is he watching me? Is he going to punish me? They live in fear, not kidding. With every world tragedy, every war or natural disaster, folks that have left Jehovah's Witnesses are so ingrained with all of this stuff about the God of the Bible that they brace themselves for Armageddon. They think, this must be it. Yeah, even though they haven't been to a Kingdom Hall in years, it lives on. For those Jehovah's Witnesses bravely listening today, I encourage you to start your journey to freedom by first addressing that elephant in the room. Start there. Start with Jehovah. Many of us understand your pain, your confusion, your fear. We really understand. I love this quote from Chyla Wojcik from her book On Being a Rat and Other Observations. She said this, quote, I continue to live inside a dichotomy: what was and what shall be. The pain in my skull is me trying to mesh the two. End quote. I want to promise anyone associated with this religion that you can get relief from that headache. Stop trying to mesh or put together what you know about the biblical God Jehovah. The book is in every Holiday Inn nightstand. Everyone can see who the God of the Bible is. And remember, and I find this very inspiring, even my guy Noah eventually pushed the elephant off the ark, right? Address the elephant in the room. I want to thank you for being with me this week. Wherever you may be well.